Ladies and gentlemen, something is going on with wide receiver Hunter Renfrow. He is missing right now. And Jimmy Garoppolo said some things about his former team, and his former head coach Kyle Shannahan clapped back. Josh Jacobs is back at practice and opened up about negotiations. Plus, the Raiders' official practice squad is out, and they have solidified their 53-man roster. Remember to like and subscribe for more Raiders content. Sorry for your loss to anyone who bought a number 28 Josh Jacobs jersey, like my freaking wife, because Josh Jacobs is out there in number 8, back at practice, and it's just so great to finally see this guy back after all the negotiations between him, his agent, Black and White Sports, and the Raiders. It really did look like Josh Jacobs was determined to hold out, and I think that's ultimately why the Raiders caved and gave him that Saquon Barkley type deal, where they sprinkled on a couple extra $1 million. And it looks like Jacobs wanted to switch his number last year, but the NFL was going to charge him $3.5 million for it. That is so messed up to do that to players who are just scraping by. Make the freaking owner cover that tab. But maybe that's why some of Jacobs' 28 jerseys were 50% off. Raiders were probably trying to clear the product out so Jacobs could easily switch his number. And Jacobs spoke to the media today about negotiations. He was asked if things got a little emotional, if things ever got a little heated.
I mean, I feel like, we made it happen, so it ain't no hard feelings now. I mean, I feel like I said, we made it happen, so it's a clean slate with me. It was never really just no hate on each side. I understood it, but at the same time, I understood my value too. So
there was never any hate on each side. There were no hard feelings. He understood the business. He understood this is how it goes, but he is saying he still knew his value at the end of the day. And I'm glad the guy stood his ground, not only for himself, but for the running back position as a whole. 2 players that the Raiders need are back at practice, and that is edge defender Chandler Jones, the veteran, along with Dylan Parham, the left guard. We know Dylan Parham got shaken up during preseason. Chandler Jones had not been practicing for some time, but we're going to need him for week 1 against the Denver Broncos. We want to have that great rotation of edge defenders. That is going to be the secret to the Raiders' success on the defense side of the ball. Raiders released a ton of people. We covered it yesterday, and now they're adding players to the practice squad, and that includes Antoine Wesley, wide receiver who had 4 starts with the Cardinals in 2021, and he spent last year on IR with Arizona, but the Raiders have this extra wide receiver on the practice squad now. They've also added Devin Ross, another wide receiver, to the practice squad. This guy was playing in the USFL last year. He was with the USFL Panthers, so he does have some experience. But in addition to these 2 guys, there's tons of players added to the practice squad. McClendon Curtis, the guard, the Raiders were able to pick up. Also Matthew Butler, the former 5th-round pick from Tennessee. Many of us were shocked to see him released, in addition to Neil Farrell Jr., the 4th-round pick in 2022, traded to the Kansas City Chiefs. I could throw so much shade on McDaniels for that horrible drafting, but I'm going to hold back a little bit. Raiders were also able to grab Cole Fotheringham, Tyler Hall, and along with Sincere McCormick on the practice squad, also grabbed Sam Webb and the future TikToker Isaac Rochelle. All these guys were able to be on the practice squad after being released, so it's good for the Raiders and it's good for them. They're able to still have a job, and the Raiders are able to keep them in the building for now. But one man who may have been in the building, but we did not see him on the field, and that is Hunter Renfrow. We've heard of some injury reports, but not really. We've seen him practice a lot, so I find this very alarming. The Hunter Renfrow is not on the practice field right now when you got Chandler Jones coming back, Dylan Parham going back. We have not heard from Josh McDaniels that there's any major injury to Hunter Renfrow, and in the meantime, the Raiders have 6 wide receivers on the 53-man roster right now, including Hunter Renfrow, and 2 of those wide receivers, like Trey Tucker, DeAndre Carter, they play Hunter Renfrow's same position in the slot. And if anybody has had a pulse at all this offseason, you've heard tons of rumors about Hunter Renfrow being traded away from the Raiders. And nobody would be saying this if the Raiders did not go out there and draft Trey Tucker, if they didn't sign DeAndre Carter, and now you got all these receivers on the practice squad as well. And we've seen Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler try to get their own guys, which means no excuses this year because they have all their own guys. But you've seen them sign Darren Waller, move on from him because he's not one of their guys. And it would not be that crazy for these guys to do this, because if you move on from him through a trade, only through a trade, you can't release him because you'll eat too much money. But if you trade him, you're pretty much only going to eat $5.5 million in dead cap next year. You're going to be good to go this year, actually saving $800,000 against the cap. And there's also some weird crap going on right now where the Raiders technically have 54 players on the roster because Josh Jacobs does not count yet. But as soon as he is officially added to the roster, they're going to have to get rid of somebody. And I just would not be shocked to see this happen. This is something very important to monitor, especially given the fact that he's not at practice. We don't have any injury update, and you got all these receivers on the team. One man who's on our team, who was on a different team last year, is Jimmy Garoppolo, and he was asked in particular about the Trey Lance trade. We talked about this on another video, but one thing he said more recently to Sports Illustrated was that there's a lot of weird things going on in San Francisco, and he had his former head coach clap back at him today. Now, here's what Jimmy G said.
Weird situation. Been a lot of weird situations over there in San Francisco.
So he's saying the Trey Lance situation's a weird situation, and he could not help himself and said there's been a lot of weird situations over there in San Francisco. And it's because, dude, Jimmy G's fallout with the Niners was super sketch. I mean, they literally had this guy away from the facility, said it was Trey Lance's team in 2022, and then Trey Lance gets hurt, and they go, oh, Jimmy, I'm sorry, can you please come back? We need your help. And there's always just been a weird tension between Kyle Shanahan and Jimmy G. And Shanahan was asked about these comments by Jimmy G, and he had some interesting words to say about this guy, and I think he threw a little bit of shade at him, to be completely honest.
Jimmy, the comments are the comments. I'm really not concerned about his comments.
So that wasn't too crazy, but what he says next is a little bit about Jimmy G's health, and I thought this was kind of insensitive here. This is where he talks about when they traded for Jimmy Garoppolo in 2017 after taking over the team, they being Kyle Shanahan and the general manager, John Lynch.
The era of changing is, when we got here, we waited 10 weeks, made a trade for a quarterback, played 5 games, and then we made him the highest paid quarterback of all time at the time.
And whenever you mention that, oh, we made you the highest paid quarterback of all time, it's to be like, hey, we helped you out, bud.
Then he played 2 of the next 5 years and did really good in those 2 years.
That is where I thought he threw some shade. We made him the highest paid quarterback of all time at the time, and then he played 2 of the next 5 years. And he did really good in those 2 years. That is some subtle shade at Jimmy G's health, man.
His injuries for 3 of those 5 years were legit. It was rough on him, rough on us. And then we made a move to go to a younger quarterback. And that's what we did.
So he's sort of justifying himself. Jimmy G is trying to say there's a lot of weird situations there in San Francisco, but it seems like the head coach of the Niners, Kyle Shanahan, is trying to say that he made a bunch of rational decisions with the now Vegas Raiders quarterback. And then Stephen A. Smith had to do his lame chiming in to the Jimmy Garoppolo statement on SF.
My perspective is Jimmy Garoppolo needs to shut the hell up.
Okay.
Just shut up and play. Okay.
Which is going a little too far because Jimmy G was asked this question by a reporter. It's not like he wanted to talk about his old team.
Nobody want to hear from you.
He was asked this question, though.
This is.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear from you. I'm sorry, Stephen A. Smith, but the guy did a lot for San Francisco recently, and he was asked about it because people do want to hear from him.
First of all, let's understand who Jimmy Garoppolo is.
And then he went on to just sort of attack Jimmy Garoppolo as a QB, and I don't totally disagree with everything he's saying here.
He's a damn good quarterback when he's playing, but it's rare that he plays. He spends more time in an infirmary than on a football field. Okay, if he ain't doing that, he's with dogs on Melrose.
Oh, that happened one time.
Everybody's giving him shade for hooking up with film stars, but literally that has nothing to do with him as a quarterback or how he's conducting himself with his teammates and coaches. And I'm sure if Stephen A. could, he would too. But there's some similarities there. You got Kyle Shanahan and Stephen A. Smith both attacking Jimmy G's health in a subtle way. But at the same time, you got Niners fans and reporters critical of the coaching staff of the Niners. Some of them are now becoming Jimmy G fans because he threw a little bit of shade at the Niners. And for us Raiders fans, we gotta hope that the Niners really screwed up this Jimmy G situation, that they made a big mistake, that he's more healthier than a lot of people realize, that perhaps the Niners did not protect him that well. We gotta hope that's the case, because the only way that the Raiders have a playoff season this year is if Jimmy G stays healthy or Aiden O'Connell ends up being the greatest sleeper draft pick of all time. Either way, let me know how confident you are in the roster now that you've seen the practice squad. And do you think Jimmy G is going to play a full season this year? If I was him, I got all these people talking crap on me. I got my former coach saying some crap about me. I am going to want to prove it and stay healthy this year just to stick it to these people who've been doubting me. So hopefully that lights a fire under him to compete for the Raiders all year this year. You let me know in the comments below how you think it's going to go down. My name is WiFiWillie. Peace out, and I hope you have a good one.